Do you know who is the most dangerous person? It's someone who has been deceived for many years and finally finds out the truth. Unfortunately, I didn't even have any suspicions that my wife might cheat on me. Was I really that blind? It's pretty hard to notice when everyone is against you and keeping I've finally got the house to myself. I've got the game on the big screen, 2 cold drinks finished and more waiting in the mini cooler beside my lazy boy. Now someone's calling. I hope it's not one of those annoying sales calls or a robocall. If it is, they're in for an earful. It was around 8, it's 8 p.m. It's 8 p.m. On a Wednesday evening, my wife Tracy usually worked late, so I always made plans for a night of relaxation or to catch up on entertainment tonight. I had polished off a medium meat pizza from Papa John's earlier with a couple of beers, then settled in to watch the Cubs game while enjoying a few more Coronas. I had 2 more Coronas chilling in the cooler beside me and another 6 in the fridge in the kitchen. It promised to be a great night. Tracy would typically arrive around 10. By 10 o'clock, we'd be ready for a snuggle. Wednesday nights were pretty quiet at the Endel, but this phone call was bound to disrupt my peace. I could tell something was up, even though I answered knowing I had to be there for my colleague. It turned out to be Shel Tremaine, Tracy's boss. He sounded really distressed. He'd had a heart attack while working with Tracy. My wife had called 911, and the paramedics rushed him to the hospital in critical condition. Shel told me that Tracy had told Shel that I'd be on my way and that I hoped Jack would make a full recovery. JCS had been Tracy's boss for 22 years, ever since she started working at his software company straight out of college. Over time, she'd risen through the ranks to become his right-hand woman and essential collaborator, often called his right-hand person. Jack had been Tracy's boss for years when she joined the company. I was already in a relationship with her at the time. Over the years, our families had occasion to spend time together. Tracy always spoke highly of Jacku, describing him as an excellent boss who also ensured she was well compensated. Jack is a French national and is currently at the age of 55. He maintains a fit physique through regular exercise and exudes charisma, often commanding attention in social situations. I was surprised to hear about Jack's heart attack when I got to the hospital. I parked in the visitors' lot next to the emergency room and asked at the front desk if I could speak to someone about Jack. I said I was Jack's wife and that I was also looking for him. While I was talking to the nurse, I noticed a pair of EMTs nearby. One of them I was left puzzled by a cryptic remark about a cuck, but I was soon focused on finding Tracy. She and Shel emerged from a room visibly upset, and we shared a tearful embrace as Tracy delivered the devastating news of Jack's passing due to a massive heart attack. I was in shock and unable to speak as the 3 of us embraced tightly in the hallway, all of us crying. Shel was also a citizen of France and had been married to Jack for 35 years. They tied the knot at the age of 20. Jack immigrated to this country when he got a job with an American software company at the start of the computer era. They have a daughter, Amy, who is 3 years older than my daughter, Allison, who is 18. The girls look so much alike that I could easily mistake them for sisters. Jack loved Amy, and I couldn't help but think this would be especially hard on her right now. One of the EMTs came over and asked if I was Tracy's husband. He also wanted to know if I had accepted Tracy's purse, which she had left behind. I left the ambulance at the hospital and moved away from the crying women. I took the purse in my left hand to show my gratitude and shook the EMT's hand with my right. As I started to fasten the strap of the purse, I noticed something unusual. I looked closer and found a bra tucked into the purse, hidden among the chaos of the women's clothes. When they came out of the room, I didn't really pay much attention to Tracy's appearance. Then I realized she wasn't wearing a bra, which seemed a bit odd. I thought to myself, I'm not sure how long we stayed at the hospital with Shel before she decided it was time to leave. There was someone due to arrive from the university in the morning, so Shel decided to get some sleep. I drove Shel home and then took Tracy and myself back to our house. I planned to help both women get their cars the following day, Shel's from the emergency room lot and Tracy's. When we got home, Tracy didn't say a word to me. She went straight to the main bathroom and took a shower. About 20 minutes later, she joined me in the family room. Her eyes were swollen and red from crying. She was sitting on the sofa, looking distressed, so I left my lazy boy and joined her, embracing her tightly. Her breathing was uneven, and I could feel her body convulsing with sobs. I wanted to ask about the bra incident, especially since she was supposed to be working with. I was really worried about her, but I couldn't bring myself to ask her about it that night. Instead, I just held her for another 20 minutes until she said she was tired and went to bed. It was midnight, so I decided to go to bed too. The next morning, I took a personal day, and after freshening up, I offered to drive Tracy to her office to get her car. However, she seemed really shaken up and struggled to speak coherently before she got herself together. She asked me to take her to Chel's place instead, where they had arranged for a cab to take them to the office to collect some of Jacka's belongings. Tracy was planning to then drive Chel to the hospital to handle paperwork and retrieve Jack's personal effects. Despite offering my assistance, she declined this. It was a good arrangement for me as I needed to locate the EMTs who responded to the emergency the previous night and clarify a few details. After dropping Tracy off at Chel's and receiving a brief update on Chel's condition, I headed straight to I got the names of the EMTs who responded to the emergency the night before and was told where to find them. I found them at the fire station and they recognized me from the night before. I focused on Gage, who had handed me Tracy's purse. I asked him directly about the start of the emergency. He asked what I meant, looking suspicious. My wife and Jack were. I thought you were supposed to be picked up from the hotel, but you didn't, did you? Is that why you called me Cook? Oh, I didn't mean anything personal. He replied, his voice rising. We've just had situations where the people checked into a room weren't who they claimed. When things go wrong, we're blamed. Don't shoot the messenger. Take it easy, Cage. I'm not trying to blame you. I just want the truth. I had to look up Cook, and I wasn't pleased with what I found. But that's not your problem. It becomes my problem. If you lie about where you picked them up, there'll be problems. We started at the Westside Hotel. Gage responded that they were about 15 minutes into the run when the guy collapsed and fell on your wife. She had to push him off to call 911, and in the meantime she performed CPR. He was barely alive when we reached the ER. I told the truth, which didn't need any further confirmation. I was grateful to both of them. I left, feeling their pity and knowing they were all watching me leave. I was thinking about what had happened. Tracy had been. I was really close with Jack when he had that heart attack. How long had this been going on? Then it suddenly hit me. Allison and Amy look so much alike, it's like they're sisters. I never would have guessed. Tracy had been keeping this secret for at least 19 years. How had I been so out of the loop for so long? I was really hard on myself for trusting Tracy so much. I worked late a lot, went out with friends sometimes, and went on business trips with her. During this time, I learned a few lessons. How could Chel have been unaware, despite my occasional cluelessness? Her obliviousness seemed unlikely, especially considering the striking similarity between our daughters. Chel frequented Jack's workplace, seemingly friendly with Tracy. How could Tracy betray her like this? When I got home, I found her in the family room, sipping wine. My discontent must have been evident. "What's troubling you, sweetie?" she inquired innocently. I was trying to stay calm, but I couldn't help getting angry. "How long have you been involved with Jack?" I demanded. My voice was dripping with sarcasm. "He's Allison's father, isn't he?" Tracy's eyes widened as she jumped up from the sofa in a rage. "How could you say such a thing?" She screamed, advancing towards me with intense fury. If looks could kill, her glare would have ended me on the spot. I refused to back down. I stood firm in my conviction, meeting their gaze with determination. I lowered my voice to a whisper and said, "You can demand anything from me, but don't you dare lie and tell me I'm wrong. If you do, I'll make sure you regret it." I've never spoken to my wife with such vulgarity or threatened her physically. She was shocked. She opened her mouth as if she wanted to retort, but the seriousness in my demeanor silenced her. She instinctively stepped back, perhaps sensing I could see the intensity in your eyes. I knew what you did. I kept watching her go back to the sofa, even though there was a wine stain on the carpet. The stress of your affair and the physical strain probably contributed to his death. I'm not surprised it didn't happen sooner, given how involved you were. She looked distressed, and I could see that I had touched a sensitive topic. She looked down at her hands, fidgeting for what felt like minutes, but it was probably only 10 seconds. Seconds in reality, she whispered, "Do you think I'm responsible for his death?" I wonder if Chell thinks that too. Why would Chell think that unless she knew about your relationship? Did she know and support us almost from the start? I sank into a seat feeling dizzy and bewildered, so I was the odd one out, the only one kept in the dark. What about Allison? She's known for 4 years and she's okay with it. Oh, Dan, Allison knows and she's. I said, okay with it, but that's not what I meant. Does Chell know that Allison is Jock's child? She knows, and she's fine with it. Amy knows too. I hope you all had a good laugh at the expense of old Rick. Even my daughter, his daughter, I suppose she knew and didn't tell me. Fantastic. I stormed out of the house. I ended up driving to a nearby park and simply sitting there for a couple of hours. Tracy called my cell a couple of times, but I ignored the calls and let them go to voicemail. I just sat and reflected. Despite considering myself intelligent, I felt like a complete idiot when it came to Tracy. I never even considered the possibility of her cheating on me. I was blindly trusting her for nearly 19 years. I was utterly clueless. I couldn't help but wonder if there were others besides JC. My mind was flooded with thoughts as it began to darken. I left the park and headed home. Upon entering the house through the garage, I noticed a faint light in the kitchen above the table. Tracy was seated in her usual spot with a cup of tea. She offered me a cup, but I declined and opted for something stronger from my liquor cabinet. I poured myself a scotch and took a seat in my chair across from her. I can't even begin to express how sorry I am. I'm sorry for hurting you, Tracy, she said softly, looking down at her hands. I need to hear the whole truth now. You need to explain how you could betray me while claiming to love me, I replied, my voice tinged with frustration. You need to tell me if you ever truly loved me and respected me. Don't you dare question my love for you. That's not true. I love 2 people. Just get on with it, I said, devoid of emotion. Tracy had joined Softal when the company was nearly a year old. Like many small businesses, the small team wore multiple hats, worked long hours, and formed close emotional bonds. It was an exhilarating period for her. She often recounted the challenges during our dates. Our relationship had started about a year before she joined the company. As Softal grew and prospered, Tracy emerged as Jock's indispensable right-hand person. Jack was the company's dynamic face, while Tracy was the hand person. She essentially served as the cohesive force holding everything together, excelling at juggling multiple tasks. Jack increasingly relied on her as his indispensable partner. Interestingly, as Tracy and I grew closer outside of work, the bond between Tracy and Jack also deepened in the office. Tracy observed that her personal and professional lives seemed to be progressing in parallel. And their professional and personal lives seemed to be developing in tandem. While maintaining a professional demeanor in front of their colleagues, they grew increasingly close, engaging in discussions ranging from mundane topics to more intimate matters like sex and politics. At 24, Tracy was strikingly beautiful with an athletic physique and long blonde hair, while Jacqueline, at 34, was a big guy with long wavy brown hair and a great smile. He looked like he was in his late 20s or early 30s. They were both very respectful and courteous. Their first intimate encounter happened naturally on an old sofa in Jock's office after a long day. Tracy said that she never felt guilty about being intimate with both me and Jock. Even after I married her, it wasn't merely physical desire, but rather a profound loving connection. However, Tracy felt unable to tell me about this aspect of her life because I was strongly against infidelity. She loved both relationships and couldn't bear to give up either one. I didn't find out about the affair until about 2 months later, when Jacka learned about it from Tracy. Persist Jacka felt he had to be completely honest with his wife, who had recently given birth to their first child. According to Tracy, Jack told Chell that although Chell and Amy would always be important to him, he wanted to give some of his affection to Tracy. So, Chell extended an invitation to Tracy to spend a weekend with Jack and her. I remember Tracy leaving for the weekend, saying her mother was ill. After that weekend, she said it was okay for them to have an affair. Years later, when Tracy was pregnant, it was Chell who comforted her and decided what to do. If the child was Jock's, it was because both Jock and it was easy to find out that the A+ fraternity was straightforward. I didn't spend much time alone with either girl, so any remarks about their resemblance were quickly dismissed by either Chell or Tracy with a joke about my social life. This averted any suspicion. Tracy said that Chell regarded her almost as a younger sister and took pride in what she called Jack's little family. I sat in stunned silence as Tracy recounted her experiences without expressing any remorse for her actions, merely recalling events. Tracy paused, expecting a response from me. All I could think to ask was whether she and Jack had ever taken a break when we were newly married and having sex almost every day. She was a bit embarrassed and avoided eye contact before finally admitting that they hadn't. That period of my life was so thrilling. I had 2 attractive men who loved and desired me. She reminisced and admitted to being mindful of minimizing any crossover, but confessed to never allowing me intimate contact after being with Jack. I muttered, "Quite considerate of you. It's funny, after all this time, that I never really compared your sexual performances. Both of you were great lovers, caring and attentive, and similar in size. It wasn't about better or worse sex with Jack, it was just different." I must admit that I found some solace in the realization that my connection with the I soon found out that the endowed stranger wasn't solely driven by lust. I was really hurt to learn that she had feelings for him as well as me. I grew up believing in monogamy, one exclusive partner for each person. Despite being the recipient of her primary intimacy, there was another person she was sharing that bond with. Tracy set her tea aside and gazed deeply into my eyes as if attempting to peer into my very soul. I thought I lacked a response to her unspoken inquiry and words. I couldn't find the wisdom I needed to put my Dewar bottle in the cupboard. I put my glass in the sink before going up the stairs to bed. I didn't know why I was doing this because I wasn't going to get any rest that night. About 5 minutes later, Tracy came into bed and snuggled up against my back. I was too tired to say good night. I got up at 5 a.m., did my usual morning routine, and went to work. Tracy was still asleep when I left, which meant she wasn't planning on going to work today. Presumably she and Chell will need to resolve the situation following Jack's departure. That's their concern, though. I had my own issues to address. Work has always provided me with solace during turbulent times, and I hope this pattern will persist. I work at Mayan Pharmaceuticals, where I serve as the Vice President of Sales. Despite being 45, I represent the new breed in the industry with a background in chemistry. I possess a unique understanding of our products, manufacturing processes, and functionalities. I know a lot about products, manufacturing processes, and functionalities. In fact, I helped develop one of our most successful products, Cresol. It's a pill designed to reduce women's libido for those with excessive sexual desires. It's been a great success for us, and I've personally benefited from its success. I also earn a good salary, and, combined with Tracy's income, we were living quite comfortably. We had a luxurious home in a fashionable neighborhood and 2 high-end cars. We've got great cars and fantastic holidays. Neither of us will be worse off financially after the divorce. I finally admitted the dreaded D word. I hadn't considered it seriously until that moment. Maybe because it seemed inevitable to me, given that Tracy was unfaithful with Allison, who's away at college and out of the house. Apart from the fact that Tracy broke my heart, there's no reason for us to stay together. But it's still a big issue for me. My boss, Arnold Kramer, I've been working with Ari for 18 years now. I spent the first 5 years as a chemist at a different pharmaceutical company. I met Ari at an industry convention and we got chatting about all sorts of things. He suggested I look into sales and then offered me a job at his company. I was up for the challenge. Ari was right about my abilities and we've both done well out of it. We've got a great working relationship and we're both really happy with the way things are going. We've built a great working relationship, but I've also discovered that he's a genuinely good person. I think we'll have a lifelong friendship. Ari has been married to his wife Lauren for approximately 30 years. He has 2 adult children and 5 grandchildren. Despite being 52, he still has the energy of someone much younger. He's very clever and doesn't hesitate to bring other intelligent individuals on board his team. I'd like to think I'm one of them, Ari. He seemed genuinely concerned when I told him about Tracy's infidelity and my decision to divorce her. He asked if I was sure she'd been unfaithful, and I told him I was. He respected my need for time to process and plan, but he did give me the contact info for the lawyer representing Mound. Ari values loyalty to those who perform well for him, and he has confidence in the Mountaining, especially in their divorce division. He was more interested in helping people who were doing well financially. He said I could take as much time as I needed, but I told him I'd only be away occasionally because the case seemed pretty straightforward. We both wanted to act in our daughter Allison's best interests, and we had separate pension plans, so we could easily split the proceeds from the house sale. I must have missed that when I got home from work that evening because Tracy had dinner ready. I had my favorite spaghetti supreme with a nice bottle of Merlot. Things seemed so promising that I couldn't bring myself to remind her that Jose was the wine expert. I preferred my drinks distilled. It's hard to keep everything straight when you're juggling multiple relationships. Tracy kept up her usual cheerful chatter during dinner, pretending as if nothing had changed between us. I waited for about 10 minutes before cutting through the facade and finally uttering those dreaded words. 4 words, we need to talk. No, we don't, she snapped back almost immediately. I was taken aback by her response and her tone. I had discovered that she had been having an affair with her boss for decades. She knew how strongly I felt about cheating. How could she expect me to forgive her? I was hoping we could discuss this like adults before I proceeded with legal action. I said as calmly as possible, you can do whatever you want, but I'm not giving you a divorce. Her voice was getting more and more irritated. The fact is, you love me and I love you, and I'm not going to let you go. I'll fight you every step of the way. You're being foolish and risking the best thing you've ever had just because your pride is hurt. I started to reply, but she interrupted me before I could finish. Did I ever give you any reason to doubt my love for you? Did I ever mistreat you in any way? You received all the affection you desired, and I made sure you were well. We're each other's closest confidants, physically, mentally, and emotionally. If you hadn't stumbled upon it by chance, you would have remained blissfully in love with me until your last breath. You would have been none the wiser. Let's return to that. I did find out your love for me isn't as genuine as you claim. Otherwise, you wouldn't have given yourself to another man, both physically and emotionally. You knew it was wrong, so you kept it concealed from me. I don't. I can't believe you've been deceiving me for 2 decades. It's not just that you've been involved with another man for that long, but you've confessed to loving him as well. You've shared intimacy with him just as you have with me. How does that demonstrate love for me? Let's put aside the physical aspect for a moment. If that's even possible, can't you see that every bit of love you gave him was stolen from me? I had more than enough love for both of you. Tracy yelled back at me. He understood that, but I knew you wouldn't. I never told you, and now you're proving me right. He understood. I wasn't capable of understanding because I wouldn't have accepted you having another partner and quite a husband. That's utter nonsense. I wasn't foolish enough to let you do that willingly, so you made the choice for yourself, solely for yourself. This was all about your desires, and you fulfilled them. Believe me, if I hadn't discovered it, I would have lived my life happily ignorant. The biggest fool you could have engraved it on my damn this is Rick Avondale, the world's happiest fool. He thought life was perfect because he had no idea his wife had two husbands. The viewing and funeral took place 3 days later on a Monday, which I didn't attend. Instead, I carried on with my routine, heading to work like any other morning. When I got back, I found Tracy and Allison still in their funeral attire in the kitchen. My daughter had come home from college for the occasion. When I went to give Trick a hug, she pulled away. From my touch, Tracy turned away and softly cried. She sensed the tension and placed her hand on my arm, silently signaling for restraint. I would usually have respected the situation and backed off, but these circumstances were far from ordinary. Frustration bubbled within me, audible even as a growl under my breath. I gathered some essentials and left without further ado. Tracy bombarded my phone with calls almost immediately after my departure, but I ignored them. At least Allison was to her credit. She didn't beat around the bush. She'd made her mind up and I was the bad guy in this situation. She seemed set on making my life difficult. It was obvious she no longer saw me as her dad, either in a biological or emotional sense. It was a bit of a shock to the system. The next day I went to the bank and separated our accounts, closing the joint credit cards and setting up new ones in my name. I also met with the lawyer she'd recommended. I made an appointment with the lawyer on Thursday. I'd been awake for 3 days straight, and his name was Mike Squelch, which didn't inspire much confidence in his legal prowess. Despite my exhaustion, I didn't think there was much to discuss. I gave him a detailed account of the situation and said I wanted to end the marriage quickly and claim my rightful share. I also wanted to pursue child support from Jock's estate for our daughter. I told Mike that I was done being taken advantage of. He seemed to agree with my plans, but he warned that if Tracy opposed the divorce, it could lead to mandatory counseling and prolonged legal battles. I instructed him to proceed, true to his word. On Monday, Tracy was served with divorce papers at her workplace. From the timing, I assumed she received them at 107. Mike. Just a minute later, our receptionist told me that Tracy was calling again. I'd been ignoring her calls and messages throughout the week, and I'd told the Mayon staff to put her calls on my voicemail. They were doing that, but I realized that I couldn't avoid her indefinitely, so I told Marlene, our head receptionist, to connect her calls directly to me. I ended the call after her initial outburst. 15 seconds later, the second call came through. I hung up again, wondering how long it would take for her to understand the need for civility. If she wanted to communicate with me, she'd have to be civil. The third call took a bit longer to come through. When I answered, she spoke in a hushed tone, evidently struggling to maintain her composure. "You've won this round. We need to have a conversation." I responded with forced cheerfulness. "Contact my attorney, Mike Squelch X, to arrange a meeting with us. It might be beneficial for you to have your own attorney present as well. It could expedite matters." The appointment was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Until then, I stayed in a nearby motel. I occasionally visited my old house to mow the lawn. When I arrived at the house for the first time, Tracy tried to greet me as if I were her long-lost husband and hugged me in the driveway. I pushed her away and went inside. "You didn't have to air our problems out in the driveway like that," she said. "If I'm such a jerk, why not just divorce me?" I replied. The meeting with the lawyers took place on a Friday afternoon at 3. I let Tracy go first to present her argument. She said she loved me completely but also had feelings for Jacku. She said that now that he was deceased, everything should revolve around me. She asked if I was willing to throw away 20 years of marriage over this. She asked if our love meant so little to me. I said it meant a lot to me, so I couldn't end the marriage. She said I had her heart and deceived her to get it. She said, how could I not? This is a betrayal of trust, which is the foundation of marriage. You knew what you were doing was wrong, so you betrayed my trust to get what you wanted, both physically and emotionally. He knew and accepted it, but I was deceived. This divorce isn't my fault, it's about your selfishness and betrayal. I would never have tolerated sharing you physically with another man, but sharing your love with another man crosses an even bigger line. It hurts more than if you had simply had an affair with someone else. You loved him, slept with him, and even had his child just because I didn't know. That doesn't make it right. You both stole from me. It's fortunate he died of a heart attack that day, because if he hadn't, I would have shot him." Tracy let out a gasp as my final words hit her. Tears were already streaming down my face. "You realize throughout all of this you never once apologized for cheating on me." I pressed on, said sorry, and caused you pain. "Maybe you're sorry for getting caught, but I don't think you're truly remorseful for your actions, Rick. I believe we can salvage our relationship. Please, let's not go through with the divorce," she pleaded. "Tracy, it was our marriage. There shouldn't have been two parts. It was supposed to be just us forever." Mike glanced at Tracy's lawyer and remarked, "I think we're finished here. Your client needs to sign the documents and return them to us." Tracy's lawyer, a stern woman, was in her mid-40s and of African heritage. The American woman nodded and extended her hand for Mike to shake. Some minor details were sorted out over the next couple of weeks. 3 months later, our divorce was finalized. I instructed Mike to initiate legal action against Jock's estate, essentially seeking child support and college expenses. If Allison hadn't made it so clear at the funeral that she no longer wanted anything to do with me after raising our child together for 18 years, I might not have pursued this course of action. I guess Allison had 4 years to think it over after Tracy told her, and in her eyes, I was just a fool. I spent 14 years being a genuine father to our child. I didn't take offense when Mike suggested compensating for the lost respect with real money, precisely $1 million. I admired Mike's approach. I thought I'd get a call from Chell once she was served, but it was Tracy on the line instead. Chell must have thought I'd take the news better coming from Tracy, but she was mistaken. "Is this another way to retaliate against me?" Tracy called to ask how I was. I answered, and she said, "Hello, Mrs. Avondale. I'm calling because..." I knew why she was calling, and I wasn't oblivious to the reason. She said, "You realize this makes you look pretty insensitive, don't you?" I said, "I'm aware of that." She said, "Do you realize I spent 18 years raising someone else's child while you..." I interrupted her and said, "Shell and Jacket had a good laugh at my expense, and now that child thinks I'm a fool. I don't care what you think." I ended the call without saying goodbye. I suppose Tracy told Chell what I said. I was stubborn because I thought I was right. I tried to negotiate with her lawyer at first, but she sent me a check for $1 million. A few months later, she could easily afford that million, as she sold Sofel to a Japanese company for $8 million with Jock out of the picture. It was a smart move, but there's more to the story. 2 days after the sale, $2 million was transferred into an account under my name in the Cayman Islands. This sum was my finder's fee for Nakatomi Ltd. Successfully acquiring Softo within 9 months, as agreed with an unidentified Neomi attorney. The agreement states that, regardless of my actual involvement or how the acquisition transpired, I would be entitled to the fee as long as Neomi completed the purchase by a certain date. Once that date passed, the deal was null and void. You might be curious about my role in the Sofel deal. It's a bit convoluted, but essentially I wasn't entirely forthcoming earlier in this narrative. While much of what I've recounted is rooted in reality, some elements were embellished. The performance on my part could have rivaled an Oscar-winning role. I won an Act-Port Award for portraying myself as completely oblivious. Let me elaborate. Up until about a month before Jock passed away, I was completely unaware of what was going on. Then, out of the blue, a NACON lawyer approached me seeking my assistance in negotiating the deal with Jock for Softel. Why do you think I can help? Apart from the fact that my wife is closely associated with Jock, I asked. I was genuinely curious because we recognize your intelligence and we believe you're capable of handling the challenge and reaping the rewards of outsmarting. The lawyer replied, I was stunned. Would be an understatement. Tracy was being unfaithful, and this Japanese individual knew about it. It was unbelievable. It turned out Neomi had thoroughly researched several companies, leaving no stone unturned. They easily uncovered details about Jock, Tracy Chell, and even their daughters. They correctly assumed that I would be motivated to assist them. However, time was of the essence, as they were considering other software firms. I had to act within a 90-day period. In the first month, they gave me proof of Tracy's unfaithfulness, photos, videos, phone records, travel receipts. I had all the ammunition I needed to expose both of them. Then they made me an offer, $2 million to help them take control of the company from Jack. I was already inclined to help, but I kept that to myself. My priority was to strategize my actions and ensure the money would come to me post-divorce, avoiding any splitting since we live in a no-fault state. In a no-fault state, though, I had to keep a lid on things to avoid giving away my hand too soon. My first impulse was to go in there and give them a piece of my mind, but I thought better of it. The last thing I wanted was to end up as Bubba's cellmate. I decided to stay calm and keep up the pretense, as I've been doing for the last 2 decades. I filled Ari in on what I'd found out about Tracy and Jack, leaving out the details of my source. We spent the rest of the night at the plant, drinking Don Julio tequila and thinking about how to handle things. After drinking about half the bottle, Ari said, "Isn't it ironic that the guy who was ranting about his wife cheating has his own wife cheating on him? I should have given her some of that stuff, Rick." That's when it clicked for me, but I kept my discovery to myself given the circumstances. I shouldn't have given it to her. I used it on him. I should have slipped some of that stuff to him. 2 problems solved with 1 action. One of the notable benefits of Chrysal is its lack of contraindications compared to most major drugs. In fact, there's only one provided the prescription is followed correctly. If you follow the instructions, it's not meant to be taken by men. It effectively suppresses a woman's libido, but it can cause a spike in men's blood pressure and lead to a fatal heart attack. I just needed to get it into Jack's possession. Jack and I are both members of the same golf club. We play golf together sometimes, with 2 other guys. I arranged for us to play as a foursome on the following Saturday, with a planned stop at the restaurant for a leisurely lunch after the first 9 holes. The opening 9 holes went well, and we enjoyed a leisurely 90 minutes on the course. We took a quick break for lunch and drinks before heading out for the second 9. I have a knack for salesmanship, so while we were dining and having drinks, I casually remarked to Jack, "How are you holding up, buddy? You seem a bit fatigued." Jack, being a decade older than the rest of us, was aware of the age gap, and my question clearly got to him. I could see him pondering when I suggested we could push back our tea time by 30 minutes to allow him some extra rest. He seemed just a tad tired, but I told him there was no need to change plans. I didn't think he appeared tired at all, but I decided to play on his insecurities about being the elder in the group. I said, "I have just the thing for you." I produced a small bag of unmarked white pills from my pocket. Something I keep for myself helps me stay focused and productive throughout the day. I gave Jack the small bag with 5 pills. "Take one of these over the next few days if you like them. I can get you more next time we go golfing." Jack took 1 pill from the bag, swallowed it, and washed it down with bourbon on the rocks. He pounded his chest like a monkey and let out a small Tarzan, was really excited and said, "Let's go guys, I'm feeling energized." In reality, he probably felt the effects of the pill quite quickly. An increase in blood pressure can give you a boost, which is why athletes focus on getting pumped up for their games. However, it's not a good idea to take too much. For those wondering why I handed him a small bag instead of a pill bottle or box, the intention was for him to dispose of the bag once he'd finished. He finished the pills rather than keeping them in his pocket where they might be discovered if someone searched him during the event on Wednesday night. Those 5 pills were meant to last until Wednesday, which was when Jack and Tracy typically combined a man's already elevated blood pressure from a passionate encounter with a woman other than his wife with medication known to raise blood pressure. It would be pretty much impossible to fake a heart attack that kills you, but it would look like a normal one. Our small city's crime investigation unit doesn't have a lot of resources, so they wouldn't look into it unless something seemed suspicious. So I made sure to play my part as the betrayed husband, acting exactly as I had when I first found out about the affair a month ago. I have to admit, I was pretty surprised at my own acting skills, actually. Just 2 days after the funds landed in my account and were swiftly transferred elsewhere, I treated Ari and his wife to an extravagant dinner. I told them I was expressing gratitude for Ari's exemplary leadership and loyalty during my difficult times. But little did they know, it was actually a gesture of appreciation for his unwitting role in my scheme for vengeance with Jack out of the picture. The connection between Tracy and Chell noticeably chilled, particularly as Chell had time to reflect on Jack passing away practically in Tracy's embrace. I heard that Chell was particularly irked by Tracy's failure to sway me into dropping the lawsuit against the estate for overdue child support. Chell seemed unaware that Tracy wouldn't have benefited from that money due to our divorce shortly after Chell settled my. Jack's death also led to word spreading in the Naomi circles about the affair between him and Tracy. This effectively ruined her career in business administration. It seems that having the boss die while in bed with you isn't advantageous for one's career. Despite this, Tracy emerged from the situation with a net worth of approximately $1 million. This means she won't be struggling financially. She'll also be able to support her daughter for a while. Allison made it clear that she didn't want anything to do with me after Jackie died. I think I was rejected not just once, but on multiple occasions. I suppose that's the result of all the years I spent raising her, providing for her, coaching her soccer teams, and attending all her dance recitals. Well, I won't be making that mistake. I'm doing pretty well, all things considered. I lost my life partner after 2 decades, but I eventually began dating again. However, I'm uncertain if I'll ever fully trust another woman. I'm not convinced I'll ever find someone who compares to what I had with Tracy. Nevertheless, I'm unencumbered by any obligations and have a net worth of around $5 million. I've transitioned into semi-retirement. I'm now retired, but I do still work on special projects for my own company. Who knows, maybe one day I'll develop a pill that enables clueless husbands to instantly detect a cheating wife. That would certainly be a boon for humanity. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing. If you haven't already, feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.